Hello, welcome to The Spread, NESN's Football Picks Podcast from NESN.Coles. I was going to start over.
Oh.
Holy shit.
That's not gold.
Hello there and welcome to The Spread, NESN's Football Picks Podcast. I am NESN.com's Mike Cole, joined once again and as always by Ricky Doyle. Ricky, how are you?
Doing well.
That was a lot of pressure on that one right there.
Yeah, you nailed it though. You fumbled at the goal line coming in here on the initial attempt. The initial descent was not smooth.
That was an inauspicious start. Hopefully it's I will call it a Saquon where I fumbled late, but hopefully we're still going to get the win here on the spread. Our
also in your
podcast.
defense, you tend to nail the intro. So
that's what I was saying. That hasn't happened in literally years where I completely biffed it. It's a good thing we're not live. I'm almost knocking stuff over. I am out of sorts.
You're spilling tea.
It's been a week. It's been a month. It's been a year. But we are here in week 15. We will make our picks, our three best bets for this week in the NFL. Bye weeks are over. A lot to choose from. So we'll get into that eventually. Before getting to our picks, I guess we'll kind of just shoot the breeze, as they say. Big week for us last week.
Yeah, very good week.
I believe I went 11-3-1. You went 9-5-1. That is subject to math.
Which is always troubling for us.
A big bugaboo for myself, especially. I'm feeling good. We did not hit. I think we both went 2-1 on the show last week. Maybe. I stuck to my word. I parlayed all of our picks together. It was like 45-1, and it did not hit. We didn't even get to the 4:00 game. But who could have seen all those points coming in the Cleveland-Jacksonville game? I knew we were in trouble there when it was 7-7 after like 5 minutes. But I
think what was the one that did me in? Atlanta.
That was
Atlanta which I mean that game played out in a very Atlanta-like fashion.
Yep.
They just have a knack for it's there for the taking, and you give it away.
So I guess we hit on it last week. I think it was last week. The 49ers are clearly the best team in the NFL. Once again, they kind of just cruised. That was a game where they didn't even. Were they losing? It was tight with Seattle, and then this is kind of where I'm at with them. It's like you look up and it's like, oh, they're covering.
Yeah, that was the lead up to that game was pretty interesting too, given how much that number changed from the beginning of the week to the closing number.
I got lucky because I had that at 10.5 on the show last week and went off at like 13.
I think in some spots I think it got up over 2 touchdowns. Once the Geno Smith news came down, which
that too. Yep.
That was the other thing. It was like. Not only was the number trending that way anyways, but once you factored in that Drew Lock was starting, it got up over the 2 touchdowns, which that felt like a little bit of an overreaction for that quarterback change. But yeah, so it really depended on where you got the number, because it was, I think we had it at 10.5 in our picks, but if it closed at 15.5, if you backed the Seahawks, then you had yourself a W. But I did not have that fortune with our picks. So.
Well, it happens. To the same point, I suppose, somewhat related and kind of tying all of our talking points together and things like that, I think you'd be hard-pressed to make an argument for any other team in number 2 in a de facto power rankings outside of Dallas. Cowboys, another impressive win at home. They're 7-0 at home. They ran all over Philly in a game that you saw coming a mile away. Those teams tied 10-3 in the NFC East. Looking at the net points, Dallas is plus 188 for the year. I believe that might be the best in the league. I mean, they've beaten up on some chumps, so it's probably slightly misleading. But you compare that to the Eagles, who are plus 21 despite being 10-3. It's a pretty telling story. I think that kind of played itself out on the field last week, where the Cowboys look like the much better team. Yeah. Spoiler alert. We'll get into this in a little bit with one of our picks. But it is. I mean, if you wanted to make the case, honestly, that the Cowboys are the best team in the NFL, wow, I think there's a case to be made. Now, I'm still on the Niners, largely because with the Niners, there's a little bit more of a track record there, like year over year. Like we've seen this, and really, it's just been health has really been their bugaboo over the years. Whereas Dallas, there's still some questions. You mentioned the level of competition. Prone to letdowns in certain key spots, which really is why that win over Philadelphia was, I don't think you can overstate the importance of that. Correct. Just from from a standing standpoint. I mean, even though Philly technically could still win out and still win the division,
I think more so just the mental aspect of it, right? Like that's a game you need. Like you need to solidify yourself at a win like that. So good on them. But yeah, like you look at a lot of the numbers and the analytics, and like I said, we'll get into it in a little bit, but there is a case to be made that they're right up there. Because, I mean, they're good on both sides of the ball. They do everything very well.
Yeah, and so I looked into it real quickly. I was looking for strength of victory. Couldn't find anything. Just going off of FBI, ESPN, strength of schedule, the Eagles have had the toughest schedule in the league. Dallas has had the 30th toughest schedule.
So what do we make of the Eagles, by the way? On like the flip side of that whole thing.
Flawed. Are they much different than they were last year?
So,
were they as
no,
good as
they're not as good as they were last year, right? Because I don't know.
I think
I don't know
that
if
has
they have
to be the argument, but I do wonder in hindsight, or maybe I just don't remember how good they were last year.
I mean, defensively, they feel like a watered down version of last year. Like the pass rush isn't what it is.
The secondary's not very good.
Yeah, which I think they kind of go hand in hand, right? Like if you're able to get after the quarterback, that alleviates some of the pressure on their secondary, which was no great shakes last year anyways. Sure. Like they kind of won in spite of that. So now if you're also not pressuring the quarterback and you're not, dominating in the trenches like you had been last season, it's when some of these issues start to crop up a little bit. Also, the offense has been good at times, but it's not quite as explosive. I don't know. I feel like Jalen Hurts is dealing with something too. Like,
fair.
Doesn't look fully healthy. It just, I don't know. It doesn't look right, obviously.
By one metric, DVOA, they were second last year overall. They're eighth this year. Offensively, they're eighth as well this year. They were third last year. The big difference, to our point, is defensively, they were the third-ranked defense last year. They are 20th right now through 14 weeks. So
it's really going to be interesting to see how what they look like next year and the year after that, because I think the sort of the assumption coming out of last year, and especially when they nailed the draft the way they seemingly did this year, it's like, Philly's going to be in there every year, perennial contender. And then but we've seen that before with teams, and then you look and you're like, well, maybe their window wasn't as wide open as you thought it was. So I don't know what their
or everything about them
salary cap situation looks like and whatnot, but it's amazing how things can shift pretty dramatically over the course of a season.
My other thing was going to be, I wrote this in my notes, and I wrote it on Monday afternoon or Monday morning, and now it's not as prevalent as I was going to have. I posed the question to you, which team you'd rather be going into the AFC playoffs, Miami or Baltimore? And then Miami comes out and chokes away Monday night's game against Tennessee. That was one where I went to bed after the Packers game thinking that the Dolphins were up by 14 points to wake up and thought I saw a typo. The AFC, just to kind of put a bow on the conversation, generally speaking, I think it's Baltimore and then everybody else. And I'm not even entirely sure. I guess the debate is who's second. And I'd have a hard time making a case for anyone. I guess Miami, if things are going well. But we've seen them enough this year get punched in the mouth where if they're not up by 20 and pressing down on the gas, I think it's hard for them to rev up full speed, to the analogy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would lean Kansas City just for.
I guess so too.
What you've seen, it
just feels safe too. It is.
It's a safe play. That card, it's you kind of, which is why I think it's we'll see what comes out of this past week and how they bounce back from that. They got basically the softest landing spot imaginable with the Patriots, but that whole thing, that you kind of need to look yourself in the mirror, right? That was the frustration obviously boiling over, but a lot of those are just self-inflicted wounds, especially offensively outside of the quarterback play. It's another team. They feel like a watered down version of what they were last year. And it's just with them, the margin for error is so slim relative to years past.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't know, maybe they ultimately don't get back there, but yeah, everything, but the one thing working in their favor, to your point, is it is so wide open. So, I mean, do I trust Miami more than I trust Kansas City? No.
There are 6 teams in the AFC who are 7-6. Yeah. And 1, 2, 3.
None of them are particularly good.
4 of them have negative point differential. So, yeah. One thing, I guess we could talk on
7-6 team that is probably right.
Who's that?
Buffalo.
So this is the thing. This is an interesting discussion point. I think Buffalo, I think it's still an uphill battle. You look at their schedule starting this week. I think we'll get into them a little bit later with their game against Dallas at Ralph Wilson this weekend, which is a fun one. They look left for dead, and I am looking like a shrewd, sharp bettor because I actually wrote this down. I went and checked it this morning. I not have one but two Super Bowl bets on the Bills in my my betting account. The first one I made on December 6th, they were 35-1, so I'm holding a 35-1.
Wow.
Doubled back down the week later, December 11th, at 22-1. They're currently 18-1 to win the Super Bowl, plus 100 to make the playoffs, minus 122 to miss the playoffs at FanDuel. It's a coin flip right now, but if they get in, I feel pretty good about that. And that speaks to that conversation we just had about how wide open or how there's a lack of clear powers in the AFC.
It's crazy how so none of these other 7 and 6 teams, and you look at them, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, Houston, Denver, Cincinnati, none of them feel like if they get in, they can go on a run and they have a chance to go all the way.
Sure.
Buffalo's just they're a whole sort of different category.
Yeah, because by the quarterback alone, you all right?
Yeah, I'm gonna make it.
Okay, good.
I hope so.
Yeah, just from the quarterback alone, you could see him playing out of his mind, and I've heard them compared to the 2010 Packers when Rodgers went nuts. They just kind of have to find a way in, and after I know it's the cliche, just get in and you've got a chance, but I think that applies to them as much as any other team. I think they're galvanized right now by their own coach's idiocy.
In a weird way.
Did you happen to catch that?
He leaked it himself, you think?
Maybe now you're talking.
Galvanize the team.
He's been sitting on that one for 2 years, being like, if my job's ever in jeopardy, maybe it's time to hit that button.
Which would be a wild play.
Which it would be. It was a wild play to invoke 9/11 in the first place.
Exactly,
but the post-game locker room video from Kansas City, a game in which they were gifted. We'll get to that in a second too. To be like, we've got your back, and it's just it'd be like if I'm trying to think of an appropriate comparison where if I did something completely ridiculous and you're just like, I got your back. If I I don't even know.
But you know what though?
If I touch the hot stove and you're like, I got your back. It's you play with fire, you're gonna get burned. You can't be like. The other thing too, not to get off on too much down this rabbit hole, but if you're gonna pick anybody on 9/11, you can't pick that side.
Pick the good guys.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Also, there's so many comparisons that you could pull out of thin air.
Why does your mind go there?
Yeah, your mind wanders there. And
that is unsettling. Yeah.
Well, they had a point. What? What are you talking about?
Oh, that's a third rail. I feel almost uncomfortable speaking about it with you right now.
Yeah.
It's just so. So the Bills are alive, I guess, which is pretty impressive considering where they were. It's not a team I'd want to play. It's not a team I'd want to go face, in Western New York down the stretch. That end of that game, I don't know what else there is to say at this point. It's been talked about ad nauseum. They win that game basically because Kadarius Toney is a knucklehead. I think that the worst thing out of that entire ordeal was just I thought it made Patrick Mahomes look like a petulant child. I thought he acted like a spoiled brat. I thought he acted like somebody who's never been told no in his life. I think one of the most damning pieces of video the entire week was when he's going up to Josh Allen after the game and he's whining about it when there's a code of conduct or whatever. It's just going through the motions like, hey, good game, see you down the road.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's the worst. It
that's
reeks of somebody who's always gotten their way.
And that's the first real whiff of that with him, right? There's been, that was pretty.
I'm not a huge fan. I just think he's been so good for so long. I think he grew up. He's just, I don't know.
Hasn't really experienced failure.
That's exactly what it is, right? Exactly.
Which, to that point, that was one of the most amazing things from that game on Sunday was when they just casually mentioned the fact that he's never played a road playoff game.
Yeah.
I did a double take with that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But I immediately started Googling. I'm like, that's just because it doesn't sound right. But, yeah, he hasn't really been.
To complain about it after the game, be like, I know, so he tried to double back on what he said the week before, because the week before they were in Green Bay. They get screwed by that no pass interference call, and he's asked about it, and it's almost like he like laid the seeds to complain about something down the road.
Yeah.
I get like as a
this has been stewing, right? Like,
yeah, and he's like, well, I'd rather see them just let us play. So he's like, I don't mind the no call, which was clearly him being like, I'm taking the high road, and then like within 7 days or whatever it was, it just reverted. His brain reset, and he's like, no, I said we gotta let him play. It's like the guy's lined up off sides. Like, that is a penalty. You're asking somebody not to enforce the rule whose job it is to enforce the rule. I almost knocked that. My goodness. Yeah, so it's just, I don't know. He lost me on that one.
That's where I ultimately land with the whole thing, right? It's like, is it garbage that it was called? Maybe.
Sure, right.
Like, would I prefer if that call isn't called? Yes. And unless I have Buffalo in that game, obviously. Yeah. But the rule's the rule, right? Like, you can't just line up off sides.
The guy was lined up in the parking lot.
Right. Like if you do that, you do so with the risk that it could be called.
Yeah.
And when it is, you have no right to then, kick up a fuss about it.
Also,
it is what it is.
If you were to power rank teams who you would least expect to get penalized for lining up in the neutral zone at the worst possible time, the Chiefs would have to be like number one in terms of being able to avoid it because they literally had a season end because of it. So,
right. Yeah.
It's just
and like so that's where I come back to where like that isolated incident is obviously pretty wild, but like it kind of is a snapshot of the maybe a bigger issue that they're facing, which is that they're just not quite as buttoned up on that side of the ball this year. And when your margin for error, like I said, is as thin as it is, that could be what keeps them out of going to the Super Bowl again.
Could be where the frustration comes from too, but that's another story. All right, let's get into our picks.
Yeah, let's do it.
After doing so well last week, let's try to follow it up with some success this week. What's your 3-unit play?
We mentioned those 7-6 teams, right? In the AFC.
We did, yeah.
So I'm gonna look at a game with a couple of them here. Steelers going on the road on Saturday. We got Saturday football this week, Mike. Yeah. So plan accordingly. Steelers getting 2.5 points in Indianapolis. I mean, this is what, like one of those coin flip matchup between two fringy AFC playoff hopefuls. Pittsburgh right now would have the number 6 seed, Indy the number 7 seed based on the tiebreaker. I'm just looking at this as an opportunity to buy Pittsburgh really at the bottom of their market. Coming off back-to-back losses to Arizona and New England. Indianapolis, I don't know, they got a little bit of like a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on this year. Lost 3 in a row, won 4 in a row. Lost handily to the Bengals in week 14. And like I think ultimately my issue with them is that like even their peaks have just not felt sustainable. Like you had the pick sixes against Carolina. You had beating the Patriots 10-6 in London. Special teams touchdowns. Like anytime they've looked like a potential playoff team, you could be like, well, yeah, but there's always a yeah, but with them. Gardner Minshew, among 29 quarterbacks with at least 100 pressured dropbacks, has the lowest offensive grade on Pro Football Focus. Right behind Zach Wilson, Desmond Ridder, Mac Jones, and Bryce Young. 3 of whom have been benched, 1 of whom is a rookie quarterback on the worst team in the NFL. Steelers, for all their flaws, they're able to get after the quarterback, so I think you'll see some pressure this week. Obviously, keep an eye on the TJ Watt injury in the concussion protocol. But I think this is a good opportunity for the Steelers to bounce back, getting points in a game that, like I said, is kind of just a coin flip between two so-so teams.
Yeah, that is good for you for looking at that one and being like, I have a take.
Yeah.
Then again,
big game, right?
But yeah, I guess.
Not that it feels that way.
Great 90s vibes on that one.
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh and Cordell Stewart situation. So, yeah, my 3-unit play, speaking of Harbaugh, and speaking of a game that nobody wants to watch, I'm taking Chicago, getting 3 on the road at Cleveland. Montez Sweat, credit to the Bears, going out and making that trade has completely revitalized their defense. If you look at it, NFL Research put this out over the weekend. Points per game, weeks 1 through 8, Chicago ranked 28th. Since then, after the trade, they're ranked 9th in scoring defense. Their pass defense yards per game was 30th. It's now 11th. Yards per game, just generally overall, 23rd to 5th. They had they've had more sacks in the last 5 weeks than they did the first 8 weeks. By EPA, they were the 30th ranked defense in weeks 1 through 8. Since then, they're 6th. They're a top 10 run defense, top 5 pass defense. They have 3+ takeaways in 3 straight games for the first time since 2018. It's just been a lot better with him in there. I think they've got a lot of good mojo. They're an interesting case too, where they're almost certainly not going to go to the playoffs, even though I think they technically are still in the hunt. But they aren't, because of their draft situation, having the Carolina pick, they're not dissuaded from trying to win football games. So I think they're in like that weird spot where it's very unique. Like they know they're going to be picking probably number 1 overall, and they can kind of build momentum going into next year at the same time. So I think they're playing both worlds, right? They're playing with a ton of confidence. Justin Fields, since return, they've got a top half of the NFL offense in that run. And you look, I think this has just as much to do with Cleveland. The Browns are, Stefanski looks like a coach of the year candidate with what he's been able to do there. I just think it's hard to completely rely on Joe Flacco here. It's going to look good sometimes. It's going to look poor others. I watched a lot of that game on Sunday because I was rooting against points. And he looked good at times, looked really bad at others. And if you go look at I think it was 2 of those touchdowns they scored to Njoku. Guy was wide open, running wide open, which was tough to have the under. But I'm not going to totally overreact to that. And, I think if you look at it too, and one of my big themes this week is looking at pressure versus non-pressure when it comes to quarterbacks, when it comes to what defenses they're facing. Small sample side, but Flacco has a 97.2 passer rating when clean, according to Pro Football Focus. When he's under pressure, that drops to 45.2. He's just 8 of 23, averaging 4 yards per attempt when he's under pressure. Again, I just talked about what Montez Sweat and that defensive came over, and I think they're going to have some. I think they're going to wreak some havoc there. The Cleveland defense too, for as good as it's been, and it's pretty much been elite the entire season, has struggled against the run some this year, especially recently. They have the 23rd ranked run defense by EPA since week 10. They're allowing an average of 125 yards per game, 4.7 yards per carry. They've allowed 100+ yards in 4 of the last 5 games. And I think last week you kind of saw the blueprint to fix that, where they were up 14-0 and then 21-7, kind of took away the run game from Jacksonville, which really doesn't even have a great running game. So I think, you look at what the Bears are able to do on the ground here, especially with Fields leading the way. I think they're going to break some big plays. Both, I think they're get the run game going. That's going to set up some stuff downfield. DJ Moore had a great game last week as well. I'm buying into this frisky Bears team. I'll take the points here in a game that's going to be, I'm guessing the weather is going to suck too. Low scoring. I think they're poised to come up with a big play at some point to keep this within the number.
I love the Bears as an underdog.
Actually, not going to be that
like bold. In that role now that Justin Fields is back, like they're most weeks a live dog, and especially in a game like this where Flacco probably is the right quarterback for the way that team's built, because he's probably not going to make a ton of mistakes, but like the ceiling is very much capped.
Right.
So like they're going to find themselves in some close games.
So I'll take my chances against Joe Flacco in a rock fight.
Right. And a player or two might swing the pendulum in either direction. And Justin Fields is the type of player who has always that one or two
back doors always open because he
one way or the other, for better or worse, is that one play. So yeah, this is very much upset's very much on the table there. Sure. I like it.
Thanks. What's your 2?
You mentioned Harbaugh a little while ago.
A lot of Harbaugh talk.
So I am going to lay 3.5 with the Ravens in Jacksonville on Sunday night. This line seemingly implies that Trevor Lawrence will play again this week. But I don't know. I think my concerns with him are about his mobility with this whole ankle thing. Looking at his highest rushing outputs this season, he had 59 in week 7, 42 in week 4, and 31 in week 5. Jacksonville won all 3 of those games. That was during their 5-game winning streak. He had a QB rating higher than 100 in each. This is all to say, I think when he's at his best, he's using his legs.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if he's going to be able to do that quite as much this week. He carried 3 times for 11 yards last week, was sacked 4 times, threw the 3 picks. Granted, that came on the road in Cleveland against a very good defense that you just mentioned. Well, now he's facing a defense that's number 2 in defensive DVOA in Baltimore, with an NFL high 49 sacks. So it's not like things get any easier this week. And then on the other side of it, it's the bigger problem actually might be Jacksonville's defense. Since week 10, which is their first week after the bye when they lost 34-3 to San Fran, ranked 27th in EPA per play. Also, since that point, forcing turnovers on 8.5% of their drives, which is 23rd in the NFL. Before Week 10, they were forcing turnovers on 17.9% of their drives, which was first in the NFL. So that's like, we talked about this with Denver last week, right? Where like there's that turnover regression that you're going to see over the course of a season. And it felt like Jacksonville was taking the ball away, time and time again earlier in the season. Not quite doing that now. Now teams are moving the ball on them. So this is just, I think, really on both sides, a tough matchup for the Jaguars. So they seem to be trending in the wrong direction. So I will lay the 3.5 with Baltimore on the road.
Fair. I'd probably lean the under here. I looked at that. Weather's supposed to suck too. It's supposed to be rainy.
Yeah, which, I mean, we just saw that this past week, right? Baltimore's.
Yeah, that's
60 points in that game.
What talked me out of it? I was like, well, they figured it out. It's wind. Wind's always the big thing. So, yeah, for my 2-unit play, I'm going to Foxborough. I'm gonna fade the Patriots. They're coming off of last week and lay 9.5 on the road here with the Chiefs team that's lost 2 in a row. There's a bit of a narrative chase here for me where if you could look at the last 2 weeks, Kansas City, 2 losses in a row, tough spot for both of them. They're coming off of playing a Green Bay team that was coming off of extra rest from Thanksgiving, feeling good about itself, still needed a win. Scheduled, Sunday night spot, like trying to make a big impression. Taylor Swift in the building, et cetera, et cetera. Like this is just life as the defending champs and the model franchise is you get everybody's best. And I just think that was a tough one for them going on the road there. Last week, Buffalo very, very badly needed a win. The Bills are basically in a perpetual revenge spot against the Chiefs for all the times that they've been dummied the last couple of years. I think a much softer landing spot here on a Sunday afternoon as opposed to Monday night. Going to be a sleepy little Sunday game here in Foxborough. I just think that we saw the Patriots best. I know they have the rest advantage now. I think we saw their last stand on Thursday night. They go in there and get Bill Belichick his win and pretend that everything's great. And now Tommy Kern's reporting that it's all but done, that Belichick's being fired. We saw Malik Cunningham before we came in here signed off the practice squad to Baltimore, and Trent Brown saying go somewhere where they're going to respect your talent. So I think the wheels are ready to fall back off for the Patriots. And I think you look at the narrative coming out of Thursday night was Bailey Zappi balling out. He's in his bag. Look how good he is. What took so long to make the decision? And I guess that last thing is a fair point. But, I mean, the first half, he looked good. They did a nice job.
5 minutes that they looked good.
I know.
They looked like an NFL team for 5 minutes.
Completely overstated.
Congratulations.
The fact that they were up, 21-7 or something like that against a team that was led by Mitch Trubisky.
It was like a shell-shock team.
And couldn't score.
It just happened.
The fact that game was close at all in the end, it tells you that it was not as good as people maybe made it out to be. Under pressure, he was putrid. He's been putrid pretty much his entire career. He's 2 of 7, 32 yards, and 1 turnover-worthy pass last week in that game when under pressure. When he wasn't under pressure, when he's clean, 129.9 passer rating. Now here comes Kansas City, a team that ranks second in pressure percentage, a team that has 3 rushers with at least 6.5 sacks, 7 of them with at least 3 sacks. I think they're going to pin their ears back. They're going to be a little pissy. I think this is a good chance for them to get right. And if they do get right, there's no chance in my mind that Kansas or New England's able to kind of keep pace at all. I just saw this from, I'm just giving everybody in the market a hat tip today, but CBS Boston's Mike Hurley went back and found last time Kansas City lost 2 straight, they won the third game 42-30 with Mahomes throwing for 5 touchdowns. So I think this is the ultimate get right spot for the Chiefs to just completely dump truck the Patriots here.
The Patriots are lucky that they played the Steelers in that game, right? That
that's
was
the
a
other
classic case of they came out, they threw the first punch, landed right on the chin, and then was like, whoa.
I'm also glad you mentioned that.
This guy's going to kick my ass now.
I know that the Steelers have, and Patriots.com, another plug, did a really good job looking at it. I was trying to find it today, what exactly the Steelers do defensively that they really haven't changed much over Tomlin's career. And I guess they've actually kind of played more man this year than they have in the past, as opposed to that Tampa 2. But it's all very familiar. So, like, in hindsight, probably should have been like, Belichick has just completely stuffed Tomlin in a locker his entire career. I think Belichick's now 10-3. A little bit different here against Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. So I think it's going to be, they have had some success against them, but they've also had some. It's just not a layup like, Tomlin, LeBeau, Steelers,
It's just like looking back to like, what was that game a couple weeks ago where the Chiefs were laying what? I think it might have been the same exact number against the Raiders. And like, so now.
Yeah.
And that was the game they fell behind.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
They stormed back and they ended up covering. So it's like, I don't know, Raiders and Patriots, probably lean Raiders.
It's
from a
close,
talent perspective, right?
It's at least it's a very good comp.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know. This feels like an overreaction to what we saw from the Patriots, whereas this should be a little bit higher the number.
Fair enough. What's your 1 unit play?
So we're gonna circle back to that Cowboys-Bills game that we talked about at the Open. So this is a game, right? Like this requires a little bit of discomfort either way. Like either you're uncomfortable because you're laying the points against what so far has been the better team this season, or you're uncomfortable because you're betting against the Bills in Buffalo with a team whose recent track record is littered with letdowns, particularly on the road. So it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure here. I'm going to choose the latter path. I'm going to take the Cowboys getting 2.5 in Orchard Park. So like Buffalo is one of those teams where we mentioned like the statistically and analytically, like they're up there with basically among the best teams in the NFL. But the only problem is like in this spot, they're not necessarily punching down for some of the reasons we mentioned. Like the Cowboys are very much they're in that elite tier as well.
Right.
Like many of the areas where I think Buffalo would, in most cases, have the perceived edge in impacting the number, just don't necessarily apply here. Going back to like whether the Cowboys can make a case to be the best team in the NFL. So right now they're number 4 in total DVOA behind San Francisco, Baltimore, and Kansas City. They're number 6 on offense, number 5 on defense. They move the ball better than anyone. Number 1 in plays per drive, yards per drive, time of possession per drive. They score points at a higher clip than anyone else. 53% of their drives result in points. They stop their opponents from moving the ball. Number 10 in opponents' yard per drive. They stop their opponents from scoring. Yeah. Number 2 in opponents' scoring percentage.
Oh.
They pressure the quarterback. Number 1 in pass rush win rate.
Well.
And they score on defense occasionally. 6 defensive touchdowns this year. They do a lot of things well, is what I'm saying. And if they don't win a game like this, it's because of something far greater than talent. Like, talent's not the issue with this team. That's clearly there. I don't know. I feel like this Cowboys team, there's a little bit something different about them this year. But who knows? I could be eating crow when we come back and after another letdown, the annual letdown next week. But for now, from what I've seen so far, really the only question I have about Dallas is, to your initial point at the beginning, like, is it because of the competition? Because it has been suspect. I mean, their 5-game win streak, Giants, Panthers, Commanders, Seahawks, and an Eagles team that was prone to get beat up. So, again, a lot of discomfort here. But I'm choosing to believe there's a little something about this Cowboys team.
This one's a tough one. You make some compelling arguments. I think I'm probably going to, when I get there, I'm going to lean. I guess I'm going to have to ride with Buffalo. They're my team now.
I got a lot of skin in that game.
Yeah, and so I was going to, I guess if you're looking for Bills mojo, it's that, they maybe are starting to find it. And I think you look at, can Dallas go outside, play in the elements, December in Buffalo? This game's going to rock.
It's awesome, right? Like,
this is so good.
You're also going to learn, like, I mean, this is kind of a last stand for the Bills, so obviously you're going to learn a lot about them. But, like, this is a telling game.
To make the weather point, though, I think that might get overstated a lot of times with Buffalo, where, like, I don't think they're that good in the weather themselves. I think they're built to kind of be a track.
We saw that with playoffs last year.
Yeah, right. You know? So I think it's that's interesting. But, like, right now, according to NFLweather.com, 42 chance of rain showers, winds up around 20 miles per hour. This is good. I need to clear my Sunday schedule.
Is the under?
Yeah, it's just,
this is
kind of like, a better version of how excited I got for Jets Bills the 4:25 window a couple weeks ago. Now you've got Dallas coming in to play. That's so good. I'm excited for that one.
It's way more compelling than Cowboys Eagles, which in and of itself was like
I just seen
a decent matchup, like going into it. But I think the fact that this is like an inter-conference game too, like because we're still, as we mentioned in the beginning, like still trying to sort through the AFC, and like this is just a chance for both teams to prove something.
There's 3 games in the 4 o'clock window: Niners, Cardinals, Rams, Commanders, and then this.
Rams, Commanders. That's an ugly game. Ugly
in more ways than one.
So. Yeah.
For my 1 unit play, I am going back to the well, and I want to be up front. I sent in my pick at 11 a.m. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is
the timestamp, 11:09 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for the sake of this show, I have the under in Jets Dolphins. Under 40.5 is what I had at the NESN Bets live odds consensus. It's down to 39. So I'm on the right side. I am moving markets. I think somebody in that chat thread, there's about 5 of us, took that and must have bet, the rent on the under here and moved the market. Yep.
I'm guessing it was
probably
Liam. He's not here today. It makes you wonder what
Liam.
Yeah, producer Liam probably bet his entire life savings on the under here and got this number down below 40. Well, let's just say 40.5. I'll take the under in Jets Dolphins.
He's not here because he's been fading us all year, and now on vacation.
He's rich. This is put in 2 weeks, and now he's gonna let it ride here. I think this might be pretty much the same exact number for the Black Friday game in which I had the under, and I don't feel bad about that game in hindsight. I think I capped that pretty well. The Jets scored a pick 6, and then obviously the Dolphins scored a pick 6 on a Hail Mary. So 14 points there didn't seem. We would have been a lot better spot. Again, sticking with a theme, pass rush and an inability to handle the pass rush is going to be huge here. Jets rank 1st in pressure rate. Miami ranks 3rd in pressure rate. Both lines ranked 25th or worse in pass block win rate this season. I think both front sevens are going to feast here. And I think, Tua is not unique in this regard, but nobody has a bigger gulf of success or, difference in success, clean versus under pressure than Tua. He has a passer rating of 116.6 when kept clean. Only Brock Purdy has a higher passer rating, which probably speaks to something within that whole Shanahan thing too. By the way, when you keep those guys clean, they dice and they slice and dice. However, under pressure, that number plummets to 57.2 passer rating, completing just 41% of his passes. Tennessee pressured him on 46% of his dropbacks Monday night. He went just 5 of 12 for 56 yards with 2 turnover-worthy plays. 2 turnover-worthy passes. It was not good. I think, the Jets are going to put pressure on him here in this spot. I think, too, you look at the Dolphins, injury issues, major concern. Tyreek Hill, who we were talking about as, do we have that? It was an offline conversation, you and I talking about MVP.
Yeah. We probably kicked it around on him at some point or another.
Looks still like the offensive player of the year. I mean, who knows how long he could be out for, if he's going to be out. Also, not as concerning, but a big concern. Center Connor Williams went down with a knee injury Monday night. This is, so now you're going up against a really good defense, and you're down 2 very important pieces. Really tough spot here. The Tennessee game as well. Weird outlier for the Miami defense. The 4 games prior, they hadn't allowed more than 21 points, including 17 or fewer in 3 of those games. The Miami defense allowed just 13 points until the final 3 minutes on Monday night, so that feels a little fluky. So, that's only to say their defense has been pretty good as well. That's why I lean more to the total here as opposed to taking the Jets on the side, because I think you can't trust the Jets no matter how good Zach Wilson looked last week. But I think even then I would kind of lean toward the Jets with the points here. What is it at right now? 10. It's down to 8.5 in some spots already. It's opened at 10.5, down to 8.5 off of the Tyreek Hill stuff, I would imagine. So, but yeah, I will take the under 40.5, 40, 39, whatever you want to give me for the sake of record keeping. But I think this could be a low scoring game.
I think I'm with you on that one.
Weather also an issue, I think, in Miami this week. Yeah, chance of thunderstorms. It's gonna be warm, but the wind forecast is the highest in this game as it is for any other game on the week. So
I feel like we got a lot of wind this week.
Yeah, well, that's what we were supposed to have last week, but it feels like that kind of came in quickly. Didn't affect games as much as maybe we thought it did. Say Monday night, it feels like it affected the Giants-Packers game as much as any game this weekend. So, yeah.
This is a stupid question. I was gonna ask you.
Sure, I have a stupid answer.
I mean, it makes sense which game you watched more of on Monday night, but I think I know the answer to that.
The only time I watched the Dolphins Titans game on Monday night was when they did the stupid split screen.
Yeah,
and it's like, I'm aware that there's another game going on. I chose this one. Can I just watch this game on my full screen? So I did not see. Did I already mention this? That I went to bed thinking that the Dolphins were going to cover, and they lost outright. So yeah, I did not.
That was a wild swing too, because it looked for most of that game like they were not going to cover.
I know, and then all of a sudden, I had them in my picks pool this week. Yeah,
it's just like, whoa, all of a sudden they're up 14, and then
cashing my checks. Outright, yeah, I woke up, I couldn't believe it. So I saw this morning. I was looking on my phone. I saw NESN Patriots beat writer Dakota Randall tweeting about the Patriots draft position and how it improved because they needed both the Giants and the Titans to win. I'm like, what an idiot. He thinks the Titans won last night? And then, no. If anybody knows draft position and screenshots at this point, it's Dakota. I don't think he does anything else other than just regurgitate other people's work about,
yeah, he's got a pretty firm grasp of the draft board, though. Yeah. I don't know if he knows anybody in the draft, but he knows the board. He knows how the board shakes out.
Yeah, we'll get. There's plenty of time there. Do we want to get into the draft? I guess it looks like the Patriots are ticketed for a 2 spot, maybe a 3. I don't know. There's not a whole lot else to get to. I think we sprayed on a lot this week.
Yeah, we really did.
Saturday games though, is anything good?
Well, I took one of them, so.
Vikings, Bengals, Steelers, Colts, Broncos, Lions. Broncos, Lions, you have my attention. Other than that, I'm out. What do you think of Saturday game?
Sorry, I zoned out for a second. What were they?
Just in general, but Vikings. Vikings, Bengals. Vikings, Bengals, Colts, Steelers, Broncos, Lions.
I generally speaking, I'm all right with them. Yeah, I kind of like it.
We'll get into this more. I think is we get closer to Christmas. I think they're awesome around the Christmas time.
All right,
it's like,
so it's a
Christmas party. Taking a break when you're out shopping.
It feels like you're getting to the holidays, playoffs. Things are picking up. Games are starting to mean a little bit more. You're starting to talk playoff implications, which we did throughout this episode. Like, there's a certain cadence to it.
Yeah, exactly. It has nothing to do with the actual scheduling. The games themselves.
I'm picturing the 4:00 game. I flick on the tree, the lights on the tree go on.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's like, all right, so yeah, I'm in on the Saturday games, and it's not overwhelming. It's nice.
Monday doubleheader. What do you think of that?
I hate that.
It was terrible.
Yeah, I hate that. Which
it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know.
Well, I think the whole point of it was this is like a testing phase or whatever
to get away from anything, or to just add a Monday night.
I think they want to. I don't know.
If you want to take.
I think they're somehow trying to see if they can capture both a local audience and a national audience, and they're trying to use a certain window. I don't know. I was reading something the other day.
I'm looking forward to the
trying to explain it, and I said either way, this sucks. My opinion's made up on it. So
the ratings for that one is going to be insane. I just think it's for this past Monday night. I think the Packers game is going to double up that other one. That's the other thing too. It's like you put a wildly popular team plus a New York market up against two. I don't want to say anything disparaging about the Titans or Dolphins.
And then you had the Manning cast on top of it. What are we doing here? Yeah. You got another layer? Man, it's too much. Too much.
All right, cool. I'm looking forward to Saturday night.
Watching Monday Night Raw.
There you go. I'm looking forward to Sunday afternoon. We got some football. I'm excited for football this week. It's been a pleasure as always.
Always, Mike. Always is.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next week to talk about Week 16. But enjoy Week 15. Adios.